Hi, everyone. I'm Stranger Staff writer Jasmyne Keimig, and you're watching the Strangers Film Club, a bi-weekly series where my colleague Charles Mudede and I, give him a wave, Charles, discuss a film for your viewing pleasure. And this is our second edition, and we are discussing Barry Jenkins' Medicine for Melancholy, which came out in 2009. It stars Wyatt Cenac and Tracy Higgins as Micah and Joe, two people that have a one-night stand and end up spending the whole day together in San Francisco talking about love and gentrification and race and politics and all that kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to get into it. It's a great movie. Charles, what do you think about my background?
Oh, yeah, no. Today is like a clear day.
Mm-hmm.
And so your background is actually cloudier than Seattle's sky today.
That is actually very true.
And the first thing I want to understand is, you begin your piece with a kind of excavation of San Francisco, right? Of that period of San Francisco, and also that period of like American sort of history, right? The late part of the arts, right? And I want to see what drove you to take an interest specifically in that first line of approach to the film,
right?
Your breakdown of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really, I think it was just kind of like a natural reaction. Like I'm watching this movie for the first time in 2020, and it was kind of shocking how how much that time period really broke through in the film, if that makes sense. So, if you've seen the movie, Wyatt Cenac's character, Micah, is able to reconnect with Joe by watching, by going through MySpace, right? He is able to enter her information and goes through this like platform, which I don't think I've used since like for like 12 years, maybe. It's been a really long time. And so I think, kind of seeing all of the cultural artifacts of 2008 or 2007 kind of pop up in this film. So like MySpace, Wyatt Cenac is wearing this cap, with a brim that I don't think people really wear anymore. There's a lot of messenger bags, kind of the texture of it feels so contemporary to its time. And I thought it was a very interesting way to kind of visually kind of think about, the moment where they're at and how that really relates to the conversations that, both Micah and Joe are having about race, right? And, Micah is, he kind of represents this side of the conversation that is very pro-Black, right? Puts race really before everything. And Joe is sort of this person who she's dating a white man, she's cheating on a white man to be with Micah. She kind of views her herself and like her race and her cultural identity as kind of post-racial, right? That we're all humans before we're Black, right? Or before we're a woman. And so I thought that by kind of looking at the objects or the references or the things that they're wearing, I thought that it was a very easy way to kind of access how these two characters thought about race, specifically at the time that they're at.
Okay, Black man. So what do two Black folks do on a Sunday afternoon?
Go to church, eat fried chicken. What do two Black folks not do on a Sunday afternoon?
What?
Go to a museum.
That is not funny.
It is funny.
It's not funny.
It's funny because it's not funny.
Yeah. You brought up post-racial viewpoint, and this is 2008. Of course, we know this is when Obama does the amazing thing, and becomes the first Black president, right, of the United States of America. And everybody's talking about we're beyond race at this point because,
right.
And so is that part of that moment? I'm not sure if that was. I'm sure at that time it was clearly like Obama was present politically and had become a real figure. I'm not sure exactly what the dates of the shoot were, but I wondered I mean, does it date the film now? I mean, is it dated in a sense by just saying like it is locked? It feels like it is locked in a specific period that seems like now we can like tear it apart and say, oh my goodness, right? I mean, really, how can you make a film without Facebook? You know,
I know.
it seems like bizarre.
I
Like we
know.
talk about MySpace, right? And it was such an awful piece of social media. What is it?
Yeah, social media.
Yeah, social media platform. It was just ridiculously clunky, and I don't, when he searches for the address, you almost laugh at how clunky it is.
Yeah, I think I gasped. I think that in a way it is very dated, and I think the conversations that we have about interracial relationships and how we kind of view Blackness is, in a mainstream way, it's very different. And I think that the kind of anxiety that Micah's character has about being Black in a white space and not seeing other people, I think that's an idea that is engaged with in a lot more of like a nuanced sort of way. And I think it doesn't exist in the same kind of like tenor that I think Micah expresses it. But, I think it's also an interesting window into Barry Jenkins, right?
Yeah, right.
This is his first film, and he said that he wrote it as, when he got out of a interracial relationship. And so I think that's...
You said his first one too.
Yeah, his first interracial relationship. So it's like you're kind of seeing him have this conversation with himself in a way, right? Where Joe is sort of like, love is love, it doesn't matter where you're from. When Micah is very much like, no, there is a big difference, right? And we need to address that. So I think it's a really kind of beautiful film that kind of jumps between both those points, but at the same time, I think even Barry Jenkins has said that there's certain things that he probably wouldn't have included now, but he just felt like he really had to get what he was saying off his chest. And I always think that's super valuable.
People call it interracial dating, but there's nothing interracial about it. It's 9 out of 10 times, it's somebody of color hanging on to a white person.
But I wanted to ask you, I want to talk about the actors, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, what happens to Tracy Higgins?
Yeah.
I mean, she does this great performance, absolutely startlingly, cinematic, right? Mm-hmm. Up there to me with like Breathless, in terms of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sort of fresh Americanness, right? And but it disappears.
Yeah, she kind of, I don't think that she's really had a major starring role like she's had in Medicine for Melancholy. I think she starred in like a couple of TV spots, and I think she also made an appearance in the final Twilight movie, Breaking Dawn, both parts. But I think I was really shocked that she did not have more of a career, because I think, like you said, that she's kind of this breath of fresh air, and I think that she gives her character a lot of nuance. And even though she's not really given a big speech or anything like that, or her character is a bit more reserved, she kind of gives her role and Joe this sort of really textured life, I think. And I think there's a lot that she's not saying, which I think is always indicative of a great performance, because it makes me think that she has a whole other life going on inside of her head.
Right. Yes.
And so I think that that's kind of what is really sad about this film, is that Tracy Higgins wasn't, cast in everything. I would think that if, she was a white actress, she would be, in tons of mumblecore movies after, tons of independent films. But I think that this film kind of came through in the indie scene when, there wasn't hardly any Black people making this type of work, right? And I think that's what makes Medicine for Melancholy so singular for a lot of Black filmmakers, is that this was really the first time that they had seen, Black people, Black thought, Black film kind of represented in like a very indie, underground kind of way. right? And of course, Wyatt Cenac is in this, who I'm sure most people know from The Daily Show. And in an interview with Barry Jenkins, he actually said that he cast Wyatt through MySpace message. I think it was right before. Yeah, it was right before he got on The Daily Show, and I think he said Barry said that he saw Wyatt Cenac perform on YouTube and was like, I messaged him on MySpace and was just like, hey, like, why don't you come be in my movie?
If you had to describe, your idea of how you see the world, like how would you do it in one word?
That makes no sense. People aren't that simple. How can you define yourself in one word?
Easy. Me, I'm a black man. That's how I see the world. That's how the world sees me. But if I have to choose one, I'm black before I'm a man. So therefore, I am black.
Yeah, it's interesting to see kind of how different both of those actors' trajectories went afterwards.
Yeah, no, yeah. Tracy did not become well, he was already on the road. Oh, he was already on the move. Wyatt was already, his career had already momentum already. But Tracy, she didn't become a seabird, right?
Yeah.
And it always surprised me that she was eclipsed. And I also wanted to bring out something, just as we're sort of like thinking about this whole sort of interracial relationships, right, in the background of the story, right, and it's a big part of the discussion. I have noticed recently that a lot of commercials, right, have taken this interracial turn, right? That interracial couples are no longer a taboo for like selling cars or dishwashers or toothpaste, right? I wanted to, if you noticed it, and is it again? I mean, have you noticed that at all?
Yeah, I mean, my mom is black, my dad is white. Like, I think I'm always really, since I was a kid, I've always been really attuned to sort of like interracial relationship representation, if that's even a thing, just to kind of see if like my life looks like anyone else's life. And I think I definitely have. I mean, I'm not watching TV as much as I used to, but certainly in like advertising for clothes, that type of thing, I see it a lot more. And it is always kind of interesting going back and watching movies like these that where interracial relationships are still so like, what are they, like, how do they work, because I think now, even more so than then, I think there's a little bit more of an ease, if that makes sense, or there's a little bit more of an acceptance and not this sort of like weird kind of anxiety about racial propagation or whatever, that kind of anxiety that I think Micah is really trying to swim through at that moment. And in a lot of ways, the film and Micah's character reminded me of Jungle Fever, Spike Lee's film, which I think made like 10 years before, right? But I think it kind of it interrogates interracial relationships in the same kind of like suspicious way, right? So it's been interesting to see like how way more commonplace it is and tied up with capitalism, right? In this terms of like, let's sell stuff through diversity, right? Yeah. Which I think it's kind of getting at what you're noticing. Yeah,
but it's also interesting. I know we're gonna start thinking about wrapping it up a little bit, but I wanted to just to bring up something that I've always been fascinated about, and this comes out in this film, and I've always remembered like, oh, that was what was sort of interesting in this film, was that she was a black woman dating a white man, right? And that is much more different socially, right? And how people read it than sort of a black man dating a white woman, right? It's much more, she's under greater pressure for doing that. I always felt that, right? A black woman's under greater pressure for that decision than a black man is for the decision of you know what I mean?
I'm gonna take a cab. Okay, I'm gonna ride my bike. Are you happy now? You're never happy.
I mean, nobody, and I've never seen anybody really discuss it, but it sort of brought up in their discussion, like the way he's needling her. And I was like, oh, you're going into the bad place with this question. Anyway.
Yeah, because it's, and and Barry Jenkins actually, in an interview, he said that originally Joe's character was supposed to be white, right? And that it was going to be that kind of dynamic of a hookup, an interracial hookup, and them processing it together. But I think that he thought that question of kind of maybe having an extra degree of removal from the interracial relationship would be a lot more interesting. And having two Black characters think through that was, I think a better decision. I think.
Better.
I'm gonna play you a song.
All right, what you gonna play?
Okay. I can't play with you looking at me.
Okay. I'll turn around. There. I'm not looking at you.
It made the film, in fact. And last day, I just want to bring up San Francisco as a city. Yeah. I mean, this is also 2008. It's just, the city's become already expensive at the time. I mean, you bring up, $600 is your line. For a closet was even reasonable then, but we haven't seen the worst of it yet. By the next decade, it's all shot. The city is unaffordable, and it's sort of like ossified, right? It's just became this completely hardened city where nobody could, if you didn't own anything, you weren't in that city. That sort of brought up in the film.
Yeah.
A meta story.
And I think San Francisco is basically a third character in this, right? And they kind of take a tour of the entire city through bike, through walking, and I think the city's really interwoven in a lot of their discussion. And I think I'm not sure if it's iconic, but certainly the scene where there's a scene where Micah and Joe kind of walk up to a window, and then the viewers are kind of dropped into this affordable housing meeting, right? And it almost seems like it's a weird clip that somehow accidentally made it into the film. But I think that it was a really interesting move because it kind of showed that Barry Jenkins was very much aware that all of this kind of discussions about race and race relations and how Black people are kind of living in the city of San Francisco, where they make up 7% of the population, not representative at all of the U.S. population. But I think it was a really interesting, if not a little clunky way to really connect those issues that Micah and Joe were really discussing and bring the city in and the kind of city struggles in.
There is this sense in this town that we are becoming a city of the very rich and the very poor. We all know people have been pushed out at an alarming rate. I mean, I would say thousands and thousands of people have been pushed out in the last 12 years from mainly the eastern side of the city where all the renters are.
I thought it was really interesting that throughout that whole short clip of the meeting, no one said the word Silicon Valley. No one said tech. No one said Google, right? I think even one of the activists said, it's not as bad as it used to be around the .com boom, and it's like, I was watching that and I was really thinking, they have it's going to get so much worse, right? And I think, again, Medicine for Melancholy is an interesting kind of capsule because it captures San Francisco and the Bay Area before it kind of does a left turn straight into, Facebook and Google and all of these sort of big tech companies that I think the city is now really synonymous with.
Oh, yeah. And I always think that those two things, there's a double whammy for San Francisco. It was, first of all, the AIDS crisis, and then the .com boom. And the consequent tech rise just devastated the city of any interesting, of anything interesting culturally. Yeah. If you look at San Francisco, it has not produced. And we're in Seattle. We have to look at that city and say, oh my God, right? I mean, we're basically looking at the future of our own city as a consequence.
People just walk around this city like everything's so perfect and it's all good and everything. And I don't know, this just reminds me, poor folks still got it hard. Like you look at Mission Bay, and this poster's still relevant.
Well, great, Charles. Thanks so much for chatting with me. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much to our readers. If you're peeping this on social media, make sure to head over to Slog to read an essay I wrote about this film, and we'll have an essay up soon about it. See you again in 2 weeks. Thanks so much. And
All right. Cheers.